We are talking about the religious infighting plaguing a small Hasidic community about 30 miles north in New York City. Infighting that turned violent on the night of May 22nd. Now, to give us some more insight into what is going on, into what I think can be fairly described as an insular community, we're joined by Michael Sussman, the attorney for the man burned, and also Franklin Snitow, the attorney for the community's grand Rabbi, a Rabbi accused of stirring that zeal. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate it very much. All right. You heard the claim. Obviously, you're very familiar with the suit. I know you're on record as saying it's baseless. Why do you believe so?
It's baseless because the very complaint doesn't provide a basis. The fact of the matter is, the basis identifies the Grand Rebbe as the Rebbe, the spiritual leader, and solely the spiritual leader of the community, and then basically goes on to detail certain very tragic events that happened on the night of what is the holiday of Lag BaOmer, which is very key to this story, and then says, well, the Rebbe maybe is responsible. In discussing it with Mr. Sussman, you really hit on the question. The fact that someone's a spiritual leader of a community does not make him civilly liable. And when you say accused, the only one that's accused him is through a complaint by Mr. Rottenberg and Mr. Sussman. When Mr. Sussman accused him and then verbally accused him, when he came in, the only hate speech that I've really seen documented is Mr. Sussman coming into New Square and calling it Jewtown or Jewland. That's the hate speech that's gone on. The fact of the matter is that night was a tragic night. It was the holiday of Lag BaOmer. On Lag BaOmer, bonfires are started. While I do not represent Mr. Spitzer and recognize that what Mr. Spitzer was wrong and the criminal justice system will deal with that issue.
At 4 in the morning, he's on the guy's property with accelerant. I don't think bonfires.
You're setting a bonfire, Mr. Snitow. Give us a break. Don't insult the listeners. Don't insult the listeners, sir. Don't insult the listeners. Don't insult the listeners, Mr. Snitow.
If you allow me to finish,
I'm not going to allow you to spew a bunch of nonsense, Mr. Snitow.
Mr. Sussman, let me say
this. Everything you've said so far is nonsense.
Mr. Sussman,
everything you've
your
said.
complaint has 2 references to the Rebbe. You happen to be absolutely incorrect. When I said he was there, when he was there, and the situation obviously got out of control.
What situation got out of control?
There was no large conspiracy. There was a confrontation with your client.
A confrontation where?
Okay, guys, let me try and do one thing here, if I could. I want to understand, and this may not reach a threshold in the court of law, but I want to try and at least see if we can have some agreement on the environment that was from fall into May. This was from the school staff, or a school run by the Grand Rabbi, who said the following that the Journal News got in one of the interviews with a couple dozen people they talked about in the community. The staffer said, "We want everybody who lives in the village," talking of New Square, "to have one mind. We have one rabbi. I believe he's the Holy Spirit mind. If you don't like it, you should move." Is it fair characterization, Franklin, to say that it's an insular community and the Grand Rabbi, not only a person of great esteem with many, but his word and his feelings carry a lot of weight?
In spiritual matters, and let me say this, when you say it is a community of one mind,
not my words, the words here of a person who works at the school that he runs.
And that he doesn't run the school. He is the spiritual leader of the community, which is quite different than the day-to-day administration of a particular school. That community has, as a large component, it is a faith-based community where people choose to live there to follow the Hasidic teachings of New Square. The fact of the matter is that doesn't make them automatons. That doesn't make them basically people who are slavishly involved in following matters other than the spiritual followings of that particular teacher.
I don't believe you're saying that the words of the Grand Rabbi don't carry a lot of weight. He did, I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong here, he gave an order demanding that residents of New Square pray at the synagogue after a few members obviously decided to go to the Freeland.
That's not correct at all. When this community was originally established with, I think, 40 families, it was established to try to create a certain sense of unity, a certain sense of what is called in Hebrew achdus. It's a certain sense of unification and following. That unity basically created the establishment of a central synagogue. And the people who choose to live there, and that's the fact that they choose to live there, choose to pray with their spiritual leader.
So he didn't make it clear that if you didn't go to the New Square Synagogue, you weren't in effect defying the orders of the Grand Rebbe.
You were not defying orders. What you were defying was his father's founding feelings towards creating a certain type of community. While Mr. Sussman would like to impose a First Amendment secular view on that spirituality, he's mixing a religious, spiritual involvement with First Amendment rights. People enjoy First Amendment rights to pray wherever they want, and the Rebbe has not interfered with that.
So, Michael, in effect, the short, if I can do the translation, is, hey, he said what his feelings were, but he can't make anybody go to any synagogue, and he's not in charge of the school here. At the end of the day, the tragedy that happened to your client, you can't look to him whether or not the guy lived in his house.
Rich, can I say one thing?
I thought I did a pretty good job for summing it up.
Rich, can I say, I apologize. Mr. Sussman has created a term, butler. That's absolutely
inaccurate. The guy
inaccurate.
lived in his house.
No, he did not live at his house. On occasion, this young man serves as a night watchman who sleeps at the other end of a large quarter which contains both an apartment for the Rebbe at one point and at a totally different location in this quite large building.
I'll make you a deal. I'm not going to get into the residential layout here. Fair enough. Butler, don't use the word butler. You got that? Don't call him a butler.
But he's not somebody with whom the Rebbe has daily or weekly contact or even has any form of relationship with. That's the fact.
Okay.